Yay, we're live. I'm down at Westech, as you can see, and it's 8 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. I was just looking up at the clock and thinking, man, it's only 7 o'clock. That's nice. But it's actually an hour later. Stupid daylight savings time. What do they think they're doing? I am down at Westech, and you can see I'm in the control room here. And I tried to go out and take video of it's getting dark already, but I tried to take video of the two engines that I have in the back of the truck that we're going to be trying to test while I'm down here. I have on the thumbnail, if you guys take a look at that, I've got there's an LS motor and a horde of parts for Mike Finnegan, we're going to be doing some turbo stuff on LS for him that he's going to be putting in a jet boat, so that'll be a very cool thing. It'll be cool to actually see one of the motors on the dyno and then see it go out and do like fun stuff and race around. So that'll be kind of a cool deal. So we're going to do a twin turbo, two small, probably GT3582s on an LS crate motor, and it has a cam that I've never tried in it, which I think it's an LSA cam, and I've never tried that under boost. I don't know that I've ever even run that cam on a dyno test on an NA motor, but we're going to try it both ways. So it'll be kind of cool to find out. And we're going to put a Holley high ram on it and the twin turbos. Got to figure out the exhaust system, how I'm going to configure it so it fits in the boat. And we're deciding now whether to use the stock exhaust manifolds, which I think is a good idea because of plug access, or I'm going to I'll bolt up and we'll mock up those the turbo headers that everybody uses. Ours came from DYNO, but they make those stainless headers for lots of different people. The thing I don't like about those is they tend to burn the plugs. Like plug access is terrible, and plug wire burning is definitely a problem with those. So I'm going to see how they work because they're going to be up and back instead of up and forward, and we'll see how well they work, if that improves the situation at all with any of the spark plugs. Hopefully it does, and if we can run those will look cool in a boat because that's very boat headerish, and having two turbos up there will look very cool. They're both going to blow into a Holley high ram, and they'll be the ice cream sandwich intercooler that I call it, in between the upper intake manifold and the lower intake manifold. So that will be kind of cool, and it'd be interesting to see how much power he can make. I think we're looking for something that's 1,000 or less to run it in that boat, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem because it's already it's a good sized motor, and it's got enough camshaft in it, it's got enough cylinder head in it, it's got a rec port head in it, I think. So that should all work out good. So we'll be doing that. The other thing I have the Slant 6 in the back of the truck, and I have the 347 Pontiac in the back of the truck. Tonight, I was hoping to get here a little earlier. I was thinking it's only 7. I got a lot of time left, but it's already 8. With a Slant 6, what I'm going to do is take it out of the truck, and I can even do this in the truck. I need to back the truck in, and I'm going to do a leak down test and find out. The guy that gave me this particular Slant 6 said it might have a miss. He's thinking that it might have a burnt valve or something. So I'm going to find that out, obviously, before we put it up on the dyno. If it checks out okay, I'm just going to put it up and try to run it tonight. I can't do a bunch of testing with it because I don't have a lot of parts for it. I just want to see. I didn't know if this was actually going to be a runner. So I want to find that out first. And if it is, then I'll go ahead and get the other intake manifolds and camshafts and all things I want to get for it. And if not, we'll have to take it apart, and I'll at least have to fix the head. If it has a burnt valve, we'll have to replace the valve, maybe, and or the seat. Maybe just do a valve job, maybe just a replacement deal. Ultimately, we want to do all of the intake manifolds that we can, 1 barrel, 2 barrel, 4 barrel stuff. And then I'll make my own manifold. We're going to mill that head, machine the block to get the thing up to 0 deck, and maybe bore it and put different pistons in it. We'll definitely do the head work. I talked to Nick over Clay Smith, and I might even be able to do my own valve jobs on it and stuff. Should be cool because I've never done that before, so that will be interesting. But we want to do mill the head, mill the block, do some porting on the head, change the valve size, and we'll obviously do springs. We're going to cut down the seats so that we can have enough spring rate in there and stuff, and then put it all back together, hopefully, and that will kind of be the end configuration. So what I'm hoping is, I have my fingers crossed, that we go over 200 horsepower NA, which I don't think will be too much of a problem, especially given there are lots of camshafts that we can run on there, and with the super Ritchie intake manifold and a ported head, I don't think that should be a problem at all. That's not even 200 horse or 100 horsepower per cubic inch, or 1 horsepower per cubic inch. That's not a lot. I think we probably will get to 225 or more, which would be a good start. And then you start. I want to add boost to it. The thing that I definitely want to do before we add boost to it is I want to source an MLS head gasket for it. So we're going to put head studs in it and MLS gaskets. And then if I can run the fuel injection manifold and get even fuel to all the ports, then we can run E85 in it, turn the boost up, and make some at least some reasonable numbers, and that'll be cool. Cool Slant 6 stuff. And on the 347, I think I could just put that up there and run it. We want to find out right now. That's a 2-barrel manifold, but again, I don't have a lot of stuff for it. I can do header testing. I don't even have a 4-barrel manifold for it on this early one, on this early 57. We have only 4-barrel manifolds for some of the later Pontiac stuff. And that is one of the options that we're thinking about later on after we go through the slew of things that we want to do for the early motor, is upgrading it to a late model front cover, late model heads, like a 326 head would be a good option for that. We may go out in the bore size a little bit, maybe take it to a 370, which was the next step up in the factory motors, put the head on it, put the front cover on it, put cam in it, and then we can run late model intake manifolds on it, because there are a lot more of those. But some of the early manifolds, we have a 2-barrel, a 4-barrel, a tri-power, there was a 6 deuce, there was also a dual 4 cross ram. It just depends on how I can source those. Otherwise, to buy those for one test is just not a viable deal. They're way too expensive, and I'm never going to use them again after we test them. So we have lots of cool stuff coming up. So let me see what you guys are doing, and we can maybe take a walk around Westech. Unfortunately, I don't have a motor up on the dyno because I haven't put that Slant 6 up. I haven't taken it out of the truck yet, and it's now getting pitch dark because it's actually 8 o'clock. Actually, after 8. So let's see what guys got going on. Tim's in the house. ProCharge Mopar. Jeff's in here. Kevin. Admiral wants a propane test. Hill Customs. John's here. Squirrel John. Woody 74 Nova. No overlap with the other guys, so I'm an hour late. I know, and I didn't realize it. Yeah, 143,000. I'm very happy, John. Let's see. Tim, it's not the LSA. I said that wrong. It's not the LSA. It's an ASA cam. I've run the LSA stuff a lot. The LSA is smaller than the LS9 and the LS7. An LS9 or LS7 would be an upgrade for an LSA. I've run that test a lot, but it's an ASA cam. It's a GM performance cam. Anthony wants me to test a 1.9 TDI engine. The Eric here at Westech has he's a TDI Volkswagen guy, so he has a number of Passats and stuff with the TDI motors. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff with them on the chassis now. It's very cool because he's another hyper miler guy like me when I had my VX. All the power adders are good. No diesel stuff on the engine dyno. Your video is blurry and cutting out. It might be this the signal here is not good. The internet is not great here. BGE64 Hemi. Let's see what she does with MSD delete. Good cam, big turbos. The 64 Hemi makes a lot of power. Well, we know that. I actually want to do more testing on the 5.7 that's here with the VVT and the variable intake manifold, which is kind of cool. Yeah, Aaron, Tim has a good recommendation. We use high zinc stuff. I put a flat tappet cam in. I coat the whole cam with assembly lube, and I do the bottoms of the lifters with assembly lube, and then we use high zinc oil. Sometimes I'll even throw an additive in there because you can't have too much zinc. And then we break it in, and we break it in for usually 2 cycles for us, which is going to be between 20 and 30 minutes. And then we go in and you can check the lash, just make sure that nothing is changed, none of the cams have gone flat. And after that, if it survives that, usually then you're all good. Sometimes if it's a real high performance deal, we'll take the inner spring out of the valve springs because you're only idling it or running it at 2,000 or even 3,000 RPM. So we'll take the inner spring out and take some spring rate away from it, so it breaks in with less spring and there's less chance of it hurting the camshaft. And then after the break-in, we swap in the second spring if we have a dual spring setup. It's a lot more work, but it's it's definitely makes it so you don't have to worry about it as much. Evil Me wants a Dodge 488 Magnum. Tennessee's in the house. You want to do a shop? Factory LS truck radiator, a 2-row or a 3-row for a supercharged 6-liter iron. You should have the biggest radiator that you can fit in there for a supercharged application. Fishing, I've done lots of supercharged coyotes. We've done Kenny Bell stuff. I've done turbo coyotes. We've done Vortex stuff, or that might have been a Pro Charger. But I've run, and all of that was Gen 1 stuff. That was way back. Rear mount Hemi turbos. Just tell me what power output you want on the Hemi turbo, and then I can tell you what kind of turbos to use. Michael wants to know what oil we use. Anything works. We have Lucas Oil here because they're good friends with the guys from Westech, so we use a lot of their synthetic stuff. On an LS, I would use a 530 synthetic normally. Sometimes we use a 520. On some of these other things that have questionable oil pressure, sometimes we'll go to a 2050, just get the oil pressure up a little bit. Yeah, Tim, we have a set of 1.3 break-in rockers too that hold the lift and don't put as much spring rate on it and stuff. That also works. Not a lot of guys have that though. OG, come on. Have you done much with small engines such as the 1-liter 3-cylinder in the Chevy Sprint? You're talking to a Chevy Sprint turbo owner. Not only that, records with that car. I've done lots and lots of stuff with the Chevy Sprint. We did like direct air scoops for the factory air-to-air intercooler. I changed to an air-to-water intercooler. We did vane meter clicks. I moved the bypass valve. We changed the exhaust. I did compound turbos. I did different injectors. We did mild head porting. We did all kinds of cool stuff. I love the Sprint. Aaron, you can swap back to the OEM springs if the OEM spring will work with the lift that you have in the new camshaft. Michael, would you use that oil on a razor blade rebuild? We just get cheap oil from the auto parts store, or sometimes I've run the oil that's in there, that's in the motor. Not usually from the wrecking yard. Sometimes a lot of times they'll drain all that stuff with the ones that we have, but you know, whatever's in there, it works. Speaking of that, I need to change the oil in the 4.8 now that we've run a bunch of stuff on it. That's the other thing I'm going to try to do while I'm down here is I'm going to put that not so low buck Cadillac STS blower on a 6-liter motor. Evil Me, yes, Chrysler 2 or 3 motor. I'm going to the wrecking yard tomorrow to actually look for a 2.2 Chrysler. It'll probably be a Turbo 1 motor that I want to run on the dyno because that's what I want to start with. But then we'll do 2 upgrades, not Turbo 3 stuff. That's the 4-valve stuff, but we'll do the 2 stuff a lot. And I also might be getting an Omni that has a 2.5 in it. Has anyone run a 4.8 with a tiny turbo? You wouldn't use a tiny turbo for towing necessarily because you're gonna have a lot of load on it. But if you could use a single GT35 on a 4.8, which is good for 500 or 600 horsepower, and that would be responsive enough on that kind of thing for towing. Admiral, as long as the thing says oil on it, then it usually works just fine. The thing is, you just need to change it often enough to where it doesn't get all dirty. And I need to now that you guys have reminded me, I need to change the oil in my truck. So if you want 1,000 horsepower, let's say on the rear mount 5.7, then you're kind of right in between. Oh no, you're not. You could use 2 GT35 82s. They're cheap. You can get them from Max Speeding, CX Racing. There's lots of places. 2 of those are the twins that we ran on the 4.8. And if you have your rear mount is going to be much shorter than mine. And a 5.7 is going to make a lot more power than the 4.8 did. So you should be fine with those. Is it a good idea to preheat the oil on a cam break-in because additive package is activated when the oil is hot? We never do that. Just from my experience, the Turbo 1 engines tend to kick the rockers off if you over-rev them. Oh, you're talking about the 2.2 Chrysler stuff, right? How do you feel about oil coolers? I'm a fan of oil coolers. I always ran them when I ran the Silver State race with the Vortec on my Mustang. One of the things that we included was an oil cooler to help keep the oil temperature down. Brenda wants to know, do you shim the Morel hydraulic roller lifters in the small block Ford? I did never run Morel lifters in a small block Ford. We run the factory stuff, or Comp has stuff. Sometimes we run the link bar stuff, but I've never run Morels in that. Jerry, I was just talking to Brian Tooley about some Gen 5 LT1 testing. He's got some really cool stuff that he's done. I've only done the L83. Yeah, Fascist, the Turbo 1 does have the throttle body. It has a throttle body before the turbo. It's interestingly enough, and it has no intercooler. And the first ones that came out were just a line to the wastegate that was not controlled by the computer. And then the next year they came out with the ones that were actually controlled by the computer, which was cool because they would allow timed overboost, which was kind of neat, whereas the previous year was not, because it was just controlled by a signal from the line. Brandon Hill, 5-liter small block Ford, 190 cc GT40 heads. Can't find a big enough lower intake manifold gasket for the heads. Look at Felpro has 2 of them. They have a 1262, which is going to be more than big enough for a GT40 head, or they have a 1250, which is the one that we would normally use in any stock style head. Is there a certain RPM that you want to run total timing in when you're running a turbo? The highest timing value on a turbo motor is usually at the horsepower peak. It's usually going to be less at the torque peak, and then if you have boost a lot below the torque peak, it could be even lower down there. Joseph wants to know 2618 pistons or 4032 on a boosted 351. Are those metallurgy numbers or part numbers? Fox Body SBO Turbo 2.3 for the other guys. Aaron, actually, I just talked to, oddly enough, when I was driving down here, I had a long conversation from a guy that I met out of Bonneville when we were running back in 2001 or so. He was parked next to us, and he was working with the guys from then, the Flatfire, which you guys probably know now as the Demon Fire, the land speed record car. Back then, it had a flathead in it with a Vortec supercharger on it, and I think that they eventually went over 300 miles an hour with that combination. But the guy that was there was one of the original engineers for that, the turbo, all the forced induction Ford stuff. So he was there for the 79, like the pre-SVO stuff, all of the turbo non-intercooled stuff, the SVO, the T-Bird, the supercharged T-Bird, the Terminator stuff, the Lightning, even into the Ford GT stuff. So he was really a cool guy to get to talk to. On the 1-liter 3-cylinder, did you have a 3-into-1 collector or 3 turbos? We just ran the stock turbo, and then I also ran a compound turbo. So I actually had a Volkswagen. We tried 2 of them. I tried a Volkswagen 1.8T turbo blowing into the factory turbo, and then I also had a very small GT20 Garrett turbo blowing into the factory turbo, and we got it up to about 175 at the tire. with that. But the problem I had is I was still trying to make all of that work with the factory vane meter, and I just ran out of clicks. We just ran out of, and I also put a 1.5 to 1 and 2 to 1 rising rate regulator, a bigger fuel pump, different size injectors. We tried doing all the OG stuff, and we just ran out of ability to flow air basically because the meter was kind of topped out. Fascist, yeah, guys were doing that on the Neon motors too. The guy that I was racing, we met a guy that was racing road racing the Neon, and that's what he kept pitching rockers off of the Neon thing, but he was revving it pretty high though. Yep, 10 pounds for 10 seconds and then back down. For every second that you were off boost, it would add another second for the next round so that you could go back. And then there was also an overboost. So if you hit 14 pounds, then it would shut everything off. From 10 to 1 to 11 to 1 compression is between 3 and 4% of whatever the NA power output is you're making. So on a 500 horsepower motor, it could be between 15 and 20 horsepower. Looking at a Holley Super Sniper. Have you ever messed with that setup? I don't know what that is. They apply that sniper name to a whole bunch of things, from fuel injection to intake manifolds and all kinds of stuff. So you got to tell me what you're talking about. Jeff, what's up? Please go to SEMA's website and sign the petition to pass the RPM Act. The EPA is attacking the auto performance industry and trying to ban our modified cars. Yes, everybody needs to go sign that. Is the budget racer garage, let's see. Is a sloppy stage 2 cam good for a daily driver Chevy regular cab short bed with an LQ9 with 799 heads? Sure, it'll work fine. You'll like driving around in it. It'll be sporty. It'll have an idle definitely. And on a 6-liter, it won't be as bad. If you're trying to do it on a 4.8 or 5.3, you definitely would need a converter with that cam. One heavy hitter, that comp cam will run with a stock computer. That's what I ran. I don't know about how it's going to be affected with the automatic trans. I had it in my Mustang for about 85,000 miles, and that's all we had was the factory computer. Joseph, I think the only thing that's going to happen there is you're going to just need to change the piston or the piston to wall clearance to work with the growth rate of the aluminum. I think both of those are going to be strong enough for what you're doing, especially given the fact what we do with cast pistons. So if you have a forged piston, you're going to be okay. The Holley Super Sniper is an EFI carb. So it's a 4-hole throttle body with injection, right? That's what you're saying? Have we ever tested any engines with over 13 to 1? Lots of them at Westech. Lots of big block stuff that's 14 and 15 to 1. Yeah, idle time. I have read about the Wraith. And they also had that the 2.2 turbo stuff in the Concealer. If you look at that car, it was pretty cool. I remember racing against those guys that were involved in the development of that. Yeah, Travis, that's a 228 cam, and that's really a lot for a 4.8. It doesn't need to be in there, and especially if you combine it with, like a lot of guys do when they're racing, they put a high ram on there, which also kills bottom end. Timmy, I think the front covers are the same. Thumble, we are doing a GM 4.2 liter inline six. It's the Atlas. How much of a difference for charge temp does the ProCharger intercore make in comparison to an LSA style? I've never run an LSA, and I've never seen temperature measurements on those. If they're both running in their efficiency range, meaning that the intercooler, like brick size on the LSA, is sized for a given amount of flow and a given amount of temperature drop. If you're trying to make 1,500 horsepower with that LSA intercooler, it's not going to work very well. Probably even if you're trying to make 1,000 horsepower with that intercooler core, it's not going to work very well since it was designed for 400 or 500 or something. The core that we use, that when we're running it, we know is sized for, we've done 1,300 or 1,400 horsepower with that thing. So it has a pretty good charge temperature drop, but I've never seen any data on the LSA one. So if somebody has any, let me know. Where's the best place to get cold air? The cowl area is really good. That's a high pressure area at speed, or up, you know, to the side, not in back of the radiator, but to the side of it. You ever tested any 5.3 big bore Boss block stuff with TFS heads? So you want a big bore 2 valve? I don't think so. I don't think we've ever run anything more than, you know, 10 or 20 over. Yeah, knucklehead. That if it's a throttle body injection, we've run lots of those, and I don't usually recommend them because we've not had good luck with them. Heavy hitter, I like the Ford FE motors. I would like to. I've been involved in some testing here on FEs. Robert Pond did a bunch of stuff. He did really high-end aluminum FE motors that were going in Shelby Cobras with stack injection and aluminum-headed deals that made good power because he's built a lot of them and he knows how to make power. So I was here when they were doing that, but I've never put one together. Any chance of seeing a Chrysler 3.3 V6? It's probably pretty low on the list. The Chrysler 2.2 Turbo, though, that's high on the list. Rian, and those are all custom pistons because they're designed with a lot of times sometimes it's a 20-degree head. That not usually will they do that with a 24-degree big block Chevy head. It's usually a 20-degree, which means it's going to be a custom piston anyway. And then the piston dome is going to be scienced out to work with the chamber of that particular head to get that kind of static compression ratio, because you know, that's a lot. So you have to take up every available space. Yeah, the 406 was a cool FE. Not very many people know about that, Tim. Stefan, you should get a K24A2. I don't know if you're going to find one at the wrecking yard, but good luck if you do. But that would be the one to get. I haven't done any Ford 300s yet, but that is on the list. Yep, an 87 laser with the 2.2. Those are good. What I'm going to try to do is, in addition to getting the Omni, my fingers crossed on that, I also want to run the 2.2 Chrysler up on the engine dyno. And the reason that I want to do that is because access to the intake manifold and all the things that I want to swap, adding an intercooler and all that, is going to be much easier on the engine dyno, because it's really hard to do. You almost have to pull the head off in intake assembly to be changing any of that. And those are going to be some of the major changes. We want to do T1 to T2 stuff. We want to do different throttle body sizes. We want to do different turbos. We want to do different exhaust manifolds. And all of that is back behind, and it's kind of hard to get to on the vehicle. Now, I will be doing that on the Omni. Again, fingers crossed that I get that. But doing it on the engine dyno will also allow me not to have to work with the factory limiting ECU, so we can put a standalone on it and run it and tune it really quickly, and then go through a whole bunch of cool, like 2.2 liter turbo stuff. We just get, if you're looking for a K24A2, we just get the JDM ones from there's lots of JDM sources. There were 3 or 4 of them around my area, and I just went and grabbed one. They just sell them. They're just takeouts. You just go get one of those. It's a lot easier. I don't think you'll find a TSX or something like that in the wrecking yard. Those will be really hard to find. Evil Me, did you look at the compound turbo thing that we did? That video's up. How do you get away with running large boost? It works on the factory piston as long as you have ring gap. That's the key. Have ring gap, and your guys are not getting to the strength limit of the factory piston. They're getting to the expansion limit, the heat limit of the factory ring pack. And then when the rings butt together, they grab in the bore, it snaps the ring land, and everybody thinks, oh, I broke a piston because the piston's not strong enough. But that's not what happened. So that's how we can get away with that. And on the 6 liter, it was over 1,500 horsepower. And that's with a cast piston and a stock rod. Those happen to be Gen 4 stuff, which the rod is definitely better. What's up? Turns out that turbo TBS one was tuning head, knock retard, no matter how much timing I pulled, was because of Royal Farms gas. Shell V-Power cured it. Okay, so you got a bad load of gas. So that's happened before. Sean, I do need 2.2 or 2.5 engines if you have them. Here's my email address. You can send me information. We can get together. But what I want is something stock, because I need to start with the beginning part, and then everybody else wants, oh, you got to turn the turbo up, you got to do all blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do any of that. I want a bone stock one that runs, and then I want to do the upgrades, because we want to show what the upgrades can do so that we can document it. Yeah, Evil Me, we're going to do a turbo supercharger thing. Tyler just put a TV in the garage. Nice. Yeah, a GLHS would be nice, but they're like real money now. But what I can do is I can take my GLH turbo and then paint it and make it look like it'll be a GLHS clone, a tribute car, if you will. I know the Consular GTP, that was a cool car. And they were fast with those little 2.2 turbo motors in them. And I think that they were T3 cars too. I've never, James, thank you again, but what is Royal Farms? I've never heard of it. Budget Racer, budget race car garage, can you run 93 octane on 10.9 to 160? We run 91 here in California on all the factory stuff, the LS3, the LQ9, all of them, and it runs fine. Tyler, no, the balancer comes ready. Yes, 4.2 liter Vortec turbo. We're going to do that. The Escort motors, I like those. I actually like those old Escorts. As a matter of fact, when I was talking to the Ford engineer tonight, we were talking about how cool the because we started talking about the Turbo T-Bird and the SVO Mustang and those things, and then we started talking about the Mercurs, the XR4 TIs, and then we started talking about the Cosworth versions of those, and he said they actually got 2 of them shipped in so that they could drive them, and he was telling me about an experience that he had with one of those. It's pretty cool. I really like those XR4 TIs. I think that they're cool. Oh, convenience store, yeah, and I get my stuff at convenience stores too. Yeah, the 91 octane in California is not great. Biddle 30 thousandths is not too much when you're running that much gap. Depends on the bore size. Usually about 7,000 per inch of bore. Jeep 4-liter, yeah, Steve, I definitely want to do that too. Yes, the Cosworth Charles versions were 4-valve double overhead cam motors. Those were the ones I think that actually Roush started racing the 2-valve stuff, and then was running in IMSA GTO, I think, with the 4-valve stuff. Your 84 Mustang came with an XR4 TI engine in it. The Mustangs you could get with turbo motors in them, but they came with non-intercooled ones until the SVO. And he was telling me how bad the SVO, and we knew that, but the hood scoop on the SVO at speed, the air wouldn't flow in through the intercooler. It'd actually stack up and flow back out. So it was an air extractor. It would have been much better if they took the scoop and turned it around on that motor, because at least it would have drawn some of it would have had heated air going through the intercooler. The cure obviously was to put a front mount on it. Even the Turbo T-Bird intercooler was bigger than the SVO Mustang, so it was better. But even that, the ducting was a little better on the T-Bird. But so that intercooler was a little bit better, but a front mount was definitely the way to go. Yeah, the Maserati was another one. They made the Maserati was in the TC. And then they also had the Turbo 3 was the Lotus head, because the Maserati was a different version. Ooh, Mario, I do like the Cortinas. Cole, I'm the wrong guy to answer on what happens at high RPM on the FEs. I haven't run them. Typically, when we run boost on something, it's a rod or piston that fails, but I don't know about the valve train and stuff on those. Yeah, the Maserati is the more desirable of the 2 4-valve versions, but excuse me, the Maserati version is also has very small ports, so it's not optimized for power production either. How much compression can you run on pump gas with the right cam and tune? It depends on the camshaft. If you put a really, really, really big camshaft on it, you can run a lot of static compression, because you still have effectively a reasonable dynamic compression. If that's the thing that's dictating your octane level, it could be other things. There are a lot of other things that affect that. Yeah, the top-mounted engine on ZE, the top-mounted engines on the Subarus or any of those, that's not a good location for them. The list of Big Bang motors for the Fords, The very first one would be a Triton. And maybe even a 351 Windsor before the Triton did a redo of that. Scott, I don't think you can separate those two things. You need both of them. They need to work together to make the peak horsepower that you're talking about. Because if you have enough cylinder head, then the camshaft is going to affect it a lot. But if you don't have enough cylinder head, the camshaft's not going to affect it. And vice versa. If you have a lot of camshaft and then all of a sudden you put the right head in it, it's going to like the cylinder head. But if you don't have enough in it, even the camshaft's not going to work. Have you ever had a problem with 96 Cobra running hot? I've never owned that particular vehicle and driven around, so I can't really tell you. Yeah, somebody offered me a Dodge V10. Somebody sent me an email on it, and I need to look into whether or not we can run that. Is balancing necessary on a Gen 353 with low boost? The motor that you get from the wrecking yard should already be balanced, so it should already work. You're just going to add ring gap to it and put it together and add boost. Green weenie. That's awesome. Yeah, if you have questions, just ask here or send me an email. I put my email up. Oh, the 351 doesn't count as a modern motor. Rhiannon, a wider LSA can help you run more static compression because it's going to hurt low speed power, and it's going to extend the power out at a higher RPM range. But even with a wide LSA, you can still get detonation if you don't have a lot of duration in that camshaft, and so your dynamic compression can still be kind of high. I've run a few 3.4s. We've run the twin dual cam stuff, and we ran the 3400s. I've run a turbo on one of them on a Grand Am. Those are my only experiences with them. Stefan, I'm not going to make a VTEC LS. Somebody's already doing that, not an LS, but he's making a V8 VTEC. He just made a post on my Instagram deal, and I hope he gets it done and tested. I would love to see it. That would be awesome. Joseph, you can get away with a single on the street and on the track. Tyler, I'm running a stage 1 intense racing cam on my 3800 with some porting around the valves and deshrouding the exhaust. Without an intercooler, what's my next step? So I'm assuming that you've already turned the boost up and stuff. You should do, did you do any exhaust mods, like a big exhaust? And also E85 would be really good on a 3800 with a, is it a supercharged 3800? I hope so. If not, then you need to add boost. Yay, CA434. See, there's our 4.2 liter stuff. Richard, we tested the MS Pro on the 4200 today and made noise. That means he hooked up the harness and the harness or the MS, probably both, and made it work. So that was good. That's good news. That means it will work when we hook one up on the dyno. That's awesome. Evil me, the heat ranges of the plugs would only show if we run into detonation. Otherwise, we haven't seen power changes from that. Crash, there is exhaust that sound better. An X pipe sounds really good. A modular, especially a Coyote, sounds dramatically different than an LS does. And lots of exhaust duration definitely affects the exhaust note. So does compression. And Kevin, is that a boosted motor? That 6-liter LS3 heads, Holly high ram, 4060 trans. Good luck on the trans. Look at a 231, 243 at 50, somewhere in the 600 or so lift range, and a 112 or 13 degree LSA, something like the 469 cam or 459 cam. The SRQ Pilot, do you have an upgrade modified counterbalance 4.3 there? Yeah, look at the supercharged version that we ran. Look at the name of the video is Stormbreaker after Thor. And you can see that we ran a Torque Storm supercharger on there, but we also did a cam and a couple of other things. Eric, we'll run at least an 8 and a 9 or a 10 on really high boost stuff. Keeping it real, yes, VVT cams work, and they do broaden the power curve quite a bit, especially as we're seeing on the Gen 5 stuff. The lobby, my current compression is 10.41 and my 6.0. Can I boost it? Yes, you can. My octane is 95. Yeah, with the right timing, you can do that. I don't like the throttle body injection. The ones that are designed to replace a carburetor, I'm not a fan of those. Yeah, Tim said the same thing. Boosted 6-liter with a 4L60. So a couple of good lucks going there. Biddle, I haven't run VVT on the dyno. They've run it. The only time I've run it on the L83, we had a factory ECU, which is something we almost never do. But on that motor, we had to run it that way. And then Brian, they're out there tuning it also. And I think that they have a factory ECU, and so they can run the factory VVT stuff on the Gen 5. There's a limit to how much compression you can run, but we run a lot of stuff that's in the 10 to 11 range. And, it might be better if it was 9.5. It would just lower the compression, the bigger the window you have for tuning and the more forgiving it is. You have to be really good at what you're doing to run boost on pump gas on 11 to 1. You don't have to be nearly as good as doing it on 8 to 1 so that the window is bigger, but it's still possible there if everything's right. Tyler, it's all good. Goes to 11. If the head stops flowing at 500 lift, does that make sense to have a cam that has higher lift than the head can support? You're thinking about that wrong. Just because the head stops flowing or levels off, because it doesn't just fall off. It keeps flowing the same amount. So all you're doing is looking at a head that has the same flow lift. If you go higher in the lift with the camshaft, it will still make more power. See, Stormbreaker, somebody gets it. For a long time, that was one of my most popular videos because we did that back when Infinity Wars and stuff was going on, and Thor arriving at Wakanda was really big, all those videos. And since it was a torque storm, you know, we got double meanings. All good stuff was going on there. Yeah, Sean, we're going to run a 2006 and up with a 58X. Tyler, tonight I'm working on a Dodge Slant 6, hopefully. Aaron, when we tune a motor on the engine dyno and then put it in a car, there could be a lot of changes for the street. Usually all we're doing is wide open throttle stuff on the engine dyno, especially if I'm doing it. That's all that it is. I don't do other tuning on it. Steve sometimes does when he's doing carbureted stuff. Like if he knows it's going in a boat, he knows what needs to be done for, you know, partial loads and acceleration and all that stuff. I don't do any of that because I never set a motor up to run in anything. I always just set it up and have it do what it's supposed to do here. So if it goes in a car, it really should be done on the chassis dyno. That's a better, you know, that's a better method, or it can be done out on the street, but a chassis dyno makes it a lot easier. And that's where they spend a lot of time on the chassis dyno, is doing the drivability stuff. Like, again, the wide open throttle stuff is going to be really close from what we have here to have there. They normally run less timing and stuff out there because the temperatures are higher. Keeping it real, I don't know if BTR has a VVT 5.3 cam. They have one for the, or working on one for the L83 that's going to work very, very well. UPS, I don't have a 4200 yet. The last time I went, there were no, there were only early ones, so we weren't able to grab one. But I'm going to the wrecking yard tomorrow. Yeah, Tim, Cadillac had a fuel injected version of that motor toward the end. Is a carb for an LS going to respond as well as EFI? That's usually more. I mean, look at the video that I did on testing the single plane intake, both with carburation and fuel injection. It's what you're asking really is not a carburetor versus fuel injection question. It's more of an intake question, because you can't run a carburetor on a truck manifold, and that sort of long runner manifold is going to work really, really well. Most of the carbureted stuff, especially a single plane, is going to sacrifice power down low for power up at the top. So that's an intake question. Michael, I'm probably not going to run a Barra. The closest I'm going to get is the Amera Barra, which is the 4.2 liter. Is there any before and after testing with the Nova? Only just how far I can push it. 3800 updates. I just got down here, so we need to get I haven't got the ATI dampener for it yet, so we haven't got that running. Can you run any carb for E85? We've done that, but it doesn't work very well. We just put a lot of jetting in it and ran it like that. But an E85 carburetor is definitely the way to go because it has metering blocks for that. Can we get specific 12-to-1 compression testing? I don't know what you mean by that. Piston squirters on a boosted LS. I've never run those. We did have them on the Honda, though. John, take a look at the blower test on the 4.8. That is, the first one I did was on pump gas. Yep, see the Maribera, that's the way to go. Hopefully I don't think it'll quite do what a Barra does, but it should do pretty well. It has a lot of potential. Idle time. I like the Saabs. Have you ever had a chance to get your hands on a Cosworth twin cam 4-cylinder 2-liter? Like, is that a DBA or something? What? We don't see too many of those here. Turbo Briggs and Stratton. Michael, enjoy happy hour. Please test more Pontiac V8s. I have one in the truck. I have a 347. 1957, first year of the Tri-Power. And also they had fuel injection too. Turbo 670 Predator. Anything with an LT5 from a C4? Yeah, the Westech guys have a ZR1 motor. Floody, the new Dodge Hemis are not traditional Hemis. They're a semi-Hemi. They're the Hemi chamber is quite a bit different than the original stuff. .326 cams later. 326 came later, right? The 326. Are you talking about a Pontiac? If you're talking about Pontiac, yes, the 326 came way after this. That's the newer version with a different valve angle on the head, which is what we want to try because that one will actually probably have the right chamber diameter for us to run on this 347. Yeah, Sawzall for the 4200, taking it out would be a lot easier. And also I need to make sure that they grab the CA434. I need to make sure that they grab the bell housing as well, right? The 347, I think, is a runner. I think all we have to do is put it up there and start it and make it run. David, take a look at the accessory video that's already up that shows you what all that stuff does. Mechanical water pump, fan, power steering, all of those things. Frostbite, an LS3 NA cam is pretty good size, so you probably would need a change in converter. All right, Tyler, a crisp $100 Canadian bill. That would be awesome. Actually, I'd rather have the coins. I like the Canadian coins. Or gold actually works really good too. Canadian gold, I heard, or silver is also good. A tip jar. I do have super chats. Let's see. Show your support for Richard Holdner. Let's see. I'm not going to support myself. See, super chats is on if you wanted to do that. Let's see. I've got a coin collection. I do too. I actually have some old Mexican pesos. I found I was going through all of my pennies because I always look for the wheat pennies. And I found, I don't know, 10 or 15 of them. And one of my found was actually worth 35 bucks. So I was happy. It's not in perfect shape, but it was just cool to see. We look for the wheat pennies and then obviously the silver dimes and, you know, quarters and 50-cent pieces and silver dollars and stuff. I have an LS4 intake. I should have run that on the 4.8 when I had it on here. Michael, what's up? Larry, LS1 mods for your 2000 Trans Am. Cam and springs first, and also headers work good. Let's see. Al was thinking medium frame Borg S372 for a rear mount on a 4-liter motor. 370. Yeah, that should work. I don't know what kind of power you're looking at. It's what AR is it? Okay, it's a T4 with the 1.0. That should work good. Hit the like button. What's up? Sean says that the LS4 intake flows like the early LS1 intake, which is maybe the worst intake ever made. I would like to see that. I would like to compare that. I'd like to compare the LS4 to at least to the truck to see what the difference is. I need to do that. Tyler, what are you sending? Oh, you're laughing at the coins. Yeah, the Maserati engine came in the TC, and it might have been used in a LeBaron or something, maybe too, but it was very limited and very rare. And all of the guys that have the Maserati TC think that that's a Maserati and not a Dodge. Thanks, Joe. Joseph, thanks for coming. Joe, the Slant 6 that I have is a later Super 6 225, the biggie, but it does have a cast crank. But it does have also the 2-barrel intake manifold, so it's got the big power. Throttle body spacers, and then no thanks. I have spoken about the C4, the Crossfire, the L83 stuff. I'd like to try one. I haven't yet, though. I mean, we did some stuff back in the day. My buddy Harold, who I've known since I was 4, had a C4 with a Crossfire on it, and he did some cool stuff to it. He did long tube headers and exhaust. He took out the swirl vanes, which is not great for drivability. Jacked the fuel pressure up, put a K&N on it. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. But that car was fast, though. That car would go 150 miles an hour. So it's making about the power that a good later TunePort motor was making. Eric, you just need to let go of the flat plane crank thing. A Ford modular big bang would be good. I'm more interested in doing the 2-valve. Yeah, James, we're trying to get the L67 running. You're going to run Emmerich on a 2,000 horsepower 4.6B head so that you get the good drivability. Yeah, Eric, we did de-stroke the 6-liter, but we didn't design a whole new crank for it. It was already a crank that came out of like a million trucks. Yeah, the Chrysler, the 2.2-liter Chrysler 4-valve deal was kind of plagued with porosity problems. And then they also had, there was something in there. They had a metals problem, a dissimilar metals problem. They had something in there that they used, and I can't remember what part it was that they used that was steel. And the growth rate of the aluminum obviously was different. So they had problems with that, and they did a recall on it. And Chrysler was supposed to have fixed it, but they never fixed the porosity problem, I don't think, with that head. So it was not. I just wanted to do an 8-valve one. Carol's the Great. I'd like to see the test limit of the Summit's new line of rods. I have a set of their rods and pistons. I have a set of their Pro LS stuff. I'm going to put a 5.3 together with that, but we won't go for a maximum thing. I mean, look at what we did with the stock stuff. The limit's very, very high. I do want to test the crossfire intakes. Sean says they work better as beer cans. 2 minutes left. I got to get going. An Aussie 265 Hemi. I've never seen one of those. I mean, I've seen pictures of them, but the Iron Ellis heads were in 99 and maybe 2000. I'm working on your Richard Holden Racing Turbos logo. Nice. I have met David Vazard. As a matter of fact, after I did my first book on 5-liter performance, it's basically just all dyno testing. I just got a call out of blue from Dave, and he said, "Hey, I wanted to congratulate you on the book. It's the real kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff the industry needs." So back in the day, I thought that was really cool, because I knew who he was. I read a lot of his stuff, and I thought it was a good compliment. Brandon, I have some 2-valve cams that are big. You have to have valve clearance for them. No LS heads on Windsors. Windsors have good enough heads already. Yeah, Sean, the Aussie 265 Hemi is cool. We just don't have very many of them here. Ottawa's in the house. Yeah, 2-valve V10 would be cool. 4200. Yep, those early 6.0s do have they have the tiny LM7 LR4 camshaft in them. That's the Gen 3 6-liter Big Bang motor that I did was an iron-headed motor. It came from Chad Reynolds out of his Suburban, and it had 248,000 miles on it, and it originally had iron heads on it. I need to look back in the data. I thought that we ran that thing stock before we took it apart, and I need to take a look and see if we did that. Al wants a 7.3 Godzilla. That's really pricey stuff. I'd have to do a lot of like fundraising to be able to afford a 7.3. Okay, this is the last question for tonight. What's the timing curve difference between a boosted and non-boosted motor? The shape of the curve at wide open throttle once boost is in might be the same. It's just going to be lower. So if you have like on a NA curve for an LS, so let's say we start down at 3,000 RPM wide open throttle. Let's say we start at 22 and we end up at 29. At boost, it's going to be lower than that everywhere under boost. And you might have the same kind of curve. You want less timing down low because the motor doesn't need that timing at that RPM. It needs more timing at RPM, and it does that whether it's under boost or not. It just under boost, it needs less than the NA motor basically everywhere. So that's a good starting point. And then I could show you some of the curves that we run on some of these things. Sean wants to see a Poly 318, pretty low on the list. LA and Magnum, I want to see. Thank you guys for showing up. I got to get over to the Slant 6 and do some testing. Hopefully it's all good and I can run it and get it up there, even though it's much later than I thought. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.